I'm here with Urness, a calibration engineer at APR in Alabama, and Ahnell, who's in marketing. Today we're going to chat about a big issue at the moment, calibration. So to start with, Eric, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm a calibration engineer, work for APR, obviously. Education-wise, I started at Linfield College. I got a degree in applied physics and mathematics. I went to graduate school at Western Washington for race engineering at the Vehicle Research Institute. Did Performance Audi there, which is a collegiate competition that's worldwide. Did pretty well at that one. And then worked in the OE for a while, worked for PACCAR, which builds over the highway, diesel stuff. Worked in engine development for I think 2 or 3 years, and then did ECU algorithm design and calibration for performance aspects of the vehicle. And then worked in aerospace as a project manager for about 1.5 years, and I got a job opportunity to come down here to APR and to jump the opportunity to come in and do calibration on performance stuff. But the entire time, I went through undergrad and graduate school, I was doing engine calibration and fabrication and tuning, and just had a passion, had a love for it, and we got an opportunity to come in here and do it for the Audi stuff.
Okay, obviously in the UK, especially like in the Japanese car scene, people will always tell you it's better to have a fully custom map for each individual car, but that doesn't seem to be the case as much in the German car world, especially the VAG cars. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so on a lot of those custom applications for those cars, the ECU types or control strategies are way different. So in a lot of those cases, like the Mitsubishis and the GTRs, right? Those cars will require a lot of calibration support and constant retuning through the seasons and through other things like that because of, I would say, the non-sophisticatedness of the ECUs. So when it comes to a lot of the Audi stuff, they're closed loop systems for most everything that you have. And when I mean closed loop, it's a closed loop control system that is able to set a target and then achieve the actual. There's still calibration required to get the control system to correct, right? How you tune that correction strategy is very important. And also that you get, it's an initial guess, which we call your feed forward, and to dial that in for the car. So I would impress that, like anything, right? If you're going to make a wooden widget, you're going to carve it, right? You're going to build the Eiffel Tower out of wood, and I give you some chisels, and I give you 4 hours to build an Eiffel Tower, right? Your Eiffel Tower looks okay. But if I tell you you got 3 months to build an Eiffel Tower and you chisel it, right? You might go get a CNC mill and you might draw it in CAD. You might CNC the whole Eiffel Tower out of wood. And then when I come and show you, here's my Eiffel Tower out of wood, CNC, and you show up with your hand chiseled one you did in 4 hours, right? They're not comparable. So what I would say is that tuning is much the same, and that the amount of time you put into it, much like anything, will give you the quality product that you have. And if you have someone that's giving you a custom tune in 2 hours, it's very difficult to touch all the aspects of the tune that need to be addressed. Even with a proper start file, you got to think about the time that we're putting into each calibration. For example, the RS3, I've probably spent 2 months of time on, and I know I flashed it 450 times, different unique calibrations, and that's, I'm pretty quick at what I do, given I've done it for so long. But that's a lot of time to spend on the dyno.
And not just the dyno too. So
yeah, just the dyno.
That's included going from down at sea level all the way up to the top of mountains. I think we got 4,000 feet out of that.
6,000 feet was the highest we went, yeah. So there's a ton that goes into it. So like we drag race the car, we go road race the car. Went to Road Atlanta. We did pump gas E85. Ran the car hard. We give it to our technicians. We give it to our marketing guys. I drive it personally myself. We'll take it to Wendy's, McDonald's. I'm not saying it's called the McDonald's test, where you literally go get lunch in the car just to make sure nothing's stupid. And give it to people, let them abuse it. Like there's certain friends that you have that have the tendency to break things. Not going to mention any names.
I don't know anybody in the room.
And you give them the car. You just say, go out and then tell me, if anything is weird and goes on, right? And you're able to, and they just like have the nitpicky things, like I wish it shifted a little higher into this. So you can sit there and modify it and make it better. Drove on a 6-hour road trip in the car. So when you drive 6 hours in a car, every little thing that pisses you off will become, very, very, very obvious. Like I hate the exhaust flaps opening and closing. Like maybe if I just move it up a little bit more, it'll sound better. So what I'm trying to impress is that we spend a tremendous amount of time on these cars, and not only that, but we're also instrumenting the cars, which I think a lot of people don't do. For a development vehicle that we're allowed to do, we will take off the turbo manifold, the downpipe, and we'll put pressure and temperature sensors, the thermocouples, in the exhaust manifold, post-turbine, pre-catalyst, in the intercoolers, and all across the engine bay. Anything we're interested in seeing, the depression on the inlet or the intake system, and we can move those sensors throughout. And we have a really good data access system that integrates with our factory CAN data logger, which we're listening to everything that ECUs, every CAN, or sorry, RAM address is what it's called, but every measurement value inside the ECU we have access to. So we can see what it's thinking, how it's making calculations, how it's determining what it needs to do. And by pouring all of the data and being able to dial your calibrations in, we're able to make a phenomenal calibration that when we give it to you, you put it on your Audi, it's going to perform better than if you took me off the street and you put me in a car with a stock calibration said tune this car in 3 hours. I'm going to do a better job if you give me, you know, a month of time versus, you know, 3-4 hours. And by the way, when I do that 3-4 hour tune, did I do the track testing? Did I go to elevation? Did I do all those other things, right? Like, no, I didn't. And you know, the reason why elevation is important is that not everybody lives at sea level. And so if you go up in elevation, the turbocharger operates differently. You're going to need to optimize that for that speed. So you don't want to overspeed the turbocharger to damage turbochargers, right? And then your boost control is different. So these new ECUs are very, very complex as far as they're compensating for barometric pressure, modeled EGT and stuff like that. There's another good point. You know, you have your EGT model, back pressure, pre-turbine, post-turbine.
Exhaust gas temperature.
Yeah, all these different inputs, the ECU, the factory calibrations don't want to put all these sensors in the car. It's very costly. So if they were to put, you know, pre-turbine pressure sensor and a temperature sensor and a thermocouple amplifier, all this stuff, all of a sudden it's like boom, 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 boom. Every Audi now costs $120,000. So what they do is they instrument the cars in the dynacelles, and they take that information and they put it into a modeled value. Well, when you change things like an intake, a downpipe, the catalyst, the exhaust system, the intercooler, okay, now your pressure drop across your intercooler changed because it's a whole different core design. Your pressure drop across your catalyst changed. The pressure drop across your turbine is going to change if you change your turbocharger, right? All these change your model, which then cause the boost controls not to work properly. All of a sudden, the volumetric efficiency calculation of the ECU, basically how well it meters fuel in the air, it's not going to have a good idea of how many milligrams per stroke of air is going in, so it's not going to meter the fuel properly because you've improved the VE. So therefore, right, that's part of tuning. Every car kind of does that. But the thing is that in order to fix it, you can fix it lots of different ways. You can grab a knob over here and, you know, I'm just going to crank the fuel up. But what actually happened, right? I can go change my fuel trims to deal with the fact that I changed the downpipe. But if I change the downpipe, why don't I just go fix the downpipe model? So the pressure drop across downpipe is corrected, and all of a sudden, chances are my VE model is going to be spot on, right? There's more than one way to skin the cat, but what's the proper way to do it? And by having a good background experience in generating the simulate models, which just dictate how the ECU works, and deriving the strategies, when you come at it from the other side, you're going to reverse engineer someone else's strategy for the controls. I come at it from the approach of, I'm going to try to understand what the OE calibrator intended to do. I'm going to try and calibrate it the same way he would have wanted that module done, instead of being like, well, that's maybe what they wanted to do, but I don't really want to understand that and wipe it all out and write something else. And there's a lot of other tuners that will just like go, this is way too complex. For an example, MED 17 boost control for all Ford Focus or Ford EcoBoost. Most of the calibrators out there go, oh my god, it's a terrible nightmare, this is just way too complicated. They knock the whole function and they just make it the dumbest thing possible. That happens in the GTR market too. They just knock the whole function. Here's one map. Just put a number in there and we'll get you the wastegate duty cycle you want, right? And that's just, don't spend the time to figure it out. Don't want to spend the time to understand it. I'm just going to try to just hack it together as quickly as possible. And so, you know, that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get you as good as OEM as we could possibly do. And you only get that with time.
So all of this hard work, how does it equate to the finished product in terms of driving the car compared to, say, like a £100 stage 1 universal map you can buy off the shelf?
Well, I haven't driven a lot of those 100-pound stage 1 maps off the shelf, I can't be honest.
Well, we've seen some of this stuff, and
I've seen
percentages.
some of the maps, and I just kind of question, like, why are these people working in this industry? Like, you know, are you here because you want to generate a quality calibration and be proud of the work that you do, or are you here to make a quick buck and doing something? And it's like, you know, it's clearly not you're trying to do a calibration because you're just hacking this together. So I try not to so much, you know, worry about what those guys are doing. I just try to think about how we improve what we do. and do a better job and try to understand the new technologies coming out, because these things are getting more complicated. The only great benefit to like spending a lot of time in this stuff is that Bosch and Continental ECUs, if you think about it, right, here's a good idea too. For all your standalone ECUs, people are like, oh, the standalone ECUs are so much better than stock ECU. If I could have a Bosch MED17 ECU, just like the RS3, in my personal car, boom, I'd take it all day long over any standalone you could buy. The reason being is that whoever made that standalone hasn't put in the copious amount of time Bosch did to generate that engine controller, because it was derived from a ME7, which was from something else before ME7, which I don't know what that was, but then he goes to, ME9, MED17, and all the generations through all the decades, right? We're talking 20 years of engine controller development across every major OE manufacturer, and they've come to this, right? And here's what they give you, and you're telling me you want to remove that and put something in the car that somebody spent 3 months on? Again, it goes to the time thing. 20 years, 3 months. It's like the Bosch lambda control gives me goosebumps, to be honest. The lambda control on Bosch and Continental ECUs is off the hook. Like you say, I want 8.0 lambda, and you give it a good pre-control, like you calibrate your filtrums perfectly so it doesn't have to make a lot of compensation, and it'll just nail that lambda every time, like clockwork. And you tune a standalone ECU, I can get my custom tune. I've got one of these cars. I go and I calibrate, it's real time, update it, it's real fancy. I put that calibration in there, I can turn a closed loop control on top of it, but that closed loop controller, even with a decently tuned PID, probably won't control the lambda as closely as what the factory ECUs will. And it takes a lot of time to fill in an entire VE map for any standalone ECU. I mean, not to say that we're not spending a ton of time on these ones, but I'm just giving you my personal opinion. I'd much rather have a Bosch ECU in my car, or a Continental. 14 Golf R. Right when those things came out, they flew us to Germany and they were like, "You got to tune a GTI and Golf R." Like,
I was there. Yeah.
Like, go. I'm like, well, I haven't tuned a seamless ECU before. I didn't even do the 3-liter stuff. So it's like, let me jump into 18. I'm like, I'm just coming from all the Bosch stuff. So I racked my head for like 3 days, came up with a tune, and then we had the calibration like of what I've done in that time. Right, made good power. We were pretty happy with it. And then we came back to the United States, and we worked on more cars in the United States. We brought our own GTI, spent weeks in the dyno with our GTI. We got a call for the United States. We worked on it, and we had the issues with the turbochargers. I remember sitting there struggling, like, how do we tell our customers that the turbochargers are gonna may have a problem of losing a turbine wheel, right? Is it our calibration issue? Are we overspeeding the turbo? Is the turbo actually a problem for the manufacturer? So we struggle with that internally, about like, do we release the product, even though we know there's a problem with Audi, but we don't want to go out and say that there's a problem with turbochargers because we don't want to piss them off, but we don't want to do something wrong for our customers, but we also want to make money. So like, where do we fall in the moral compass on like what we do? And we did that. So we could have released before everybody else did. We chose not to. And we kind of sat back and said, well, how are we gonna handle this?
Yeah, we let customers know up front before they're flashing that, hey, there's a problem with these turbos. Audi had addressed it with one of their technical service bulletins. So we just let people know that that was a probability.
Yeah, we had to generate a new thing in DPP, which is direct port programming. So it's the tool, the dealer interfaces to be able to do the flash delivery. It has a check off, and the email has to be sent to the customer and has to be signed that says you understand that this this may cause damage to your turbocharger. So
and thankfully, over time, it looks like Audi and Volkswagen have kind of figured out what was going on with those turbochargers. We don't really see that issue anymore.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the early 2014, 15 models
right
that had those issues, and then it just kind of went away.
Yeah, they changed the revision like once or twice, and poof.
Oh yeah, I think it was more than that. It was almost like 10 times.
Yeah.
It just kept happening. So, but we had to communicate that to our customers because we want them to have a good experience and know all the risks that are out there.
Yeah, because you think about what we're doing, right? And every customer, maybe a new customer comes into Mark's shop, right? Some guy who's got a little extra spending money, and he's got a nice Audi, and he finds out about tuning, and it's his first experience with it. And he comes to Mark and says, hey, I want to get a remap for my car. How much is it? It's like $600, and he has to go talk to his wife. I'm like, honey, can I spend $600? And she says, oh, okay, right. So pays the money. You don't want him to go on and have a bad experience, either with dealing with Mark, dealing with the customers, or dealing with the APR tune, or having to go back and deal with dealerships. Like, you want him to have a great experience with modifying this vehicle, like I've had. Like, I love it. I'd modify everything. I'd put a turbo in my lawnmower if I had time. And that's where you want people to go. You want them to share the enthusiasm, the passion, and how fun it is to modify these cars. So you got to do your due diligence to make sure that they all have good experiences, and that you aren't taking someone who would be a lifelong consumer of your product and just pushing them away. And who knows, they go out and buy, you know, a fishing reel instead. You know, nothing against fishing.
We've been lucky enough to have a tour of the whole premises, which is absolutely mind-blowing. How does this translate to you getting stuff done and compared to perhaps smaller companies? And
smaller companies might be quicker with some things because they can maybe quickly fabricate something that they're selling to maybe a smaller group of people, maybe 10 customers, whereas we sell to thousands of customers. So the one thing that's nice about APR is that we have all the resources here to do repetitive tasks such as CNCing different end tanks or you know, welding everything up and making sure that we have the proper jigs to do it in and to pressure test them. We have all the resources to make sure that we can scan our end tanks and ensure that they're actually what they should be when we model it and then cast it. Sometimes it's not exactly the same every time, so we
Dimensionally inspect.
Yeah, we dimensionally inspect everything, and you know, you don't get that necessarily at a smaller shop because you don't have the resources to do it. And that's come with, you know, being around for around 20 years. Just kind of build up that knowledge base and the tool base over time.
You guys calibrate to your, is it all your own gear that you calibrate to? So stage 2 Golf R, for example.
Yeah.
You know, we've all done, in the UK, we've all done hundreds of them.
Yeah.
You know, with varying different hardware on them. You know, might be a Scorpion downpipe, Miltech downpipe, might be APR, it might be a sports cat.
I would say intake on a MAF car is way different than comparing a downpipe. So a 3-inch downpipe is on a 3-inch car and it's no catalyst in it. Like, don't care what the brand is. It could be whatever it is, it'll still work. But if you come down to something like you know, something that has a mass airflow sensor in it, and it's manufactured in different diameters, and the sensor depth is at different areas, you're going to get a different mass flow reading, which is going to calculate the air mass going in the engine completely different. So it's going to feel different, and it's going to time different. So you're going to have either more or less timing, and you have either too much fuel or not enough fuel, which it'll closed loop correct for, because the closed loop will do it, but at the end, it's going to mess up the feed forward control for it. And if your timing's too much, the knock control will attempt to retard it, but it's still going to try to run too much timing initially. And if it runs not enough timing, there's nothing you can do for it. So it's going to be down in power. So by changing something as simple as an intake pipe, will throw the ECU calibration way out of whack if it's a map-based car, not a speed density car. So what we'll have to do, like what we've done in the past, is we've said, okay, with these cars that are changing these map pipes, like there's 20 intakes out of the thing, we have to make sure that if somebody puts a different intake pipe on the car, that it will still work with our calibration. So you might take our intake and then 3 other major, like high volume intakes that are sold, and we'll say, okay, well here's where they all fit in the spectrum, we want to go right in the middle. So we'll basically make like a nominal like average that we're going to be, you know, maybe 3% off here, 3% off there, but as a grouping, we're going to be right in the middle so that this calibration will support these hardware parts.
It's worth people to know that, because no one would fault you if you said, well, no, this is the hardware we recommend, this is what
and we'll do that. We'll do that. We'll say this particular intake pipe
like,
is
for
now
example,
so far
you know,
out.
the amount of different intercoolers that you put on a Golf R.
Yeah.
You know, right from something that's cheap, bar and plate, like an AirTech, through to the Wagner, which we think is a decent intercooler, and yours, which is comparable, which is top range intercooler too. But their intercooler. There's so many different intercoolers that get put on those cars.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, we've tested some of those intercoolers, and some of them are just cheap. They look the same, or I mean, it'll just be kind of straight through tubes. You know, the air's not really dispersing any heat at all.
A good example recently was a stage 3 TTRS that we had come to us, and they didn't have an intercooler on it. We're like, you have to have an intercooler on the car. So they bought a CTS intercooler, put that on it, and it was just, I know what our intercooler does for intake air temps, top 4th gear pole. And this thing was 20 C higher. It's like, you spent how much money?
And it looks really similar to the system that we make.
Yeah, dimensionally it looks the same. Like from the outside it kind of looks similar. You could tell the core is not quite the same. But I mean, ballpark, if you weren't like, extremely interested in radiator core design like I am, like it would look very similar. And you'd be like, why am I paying more for the APR product? Well, I can tell you from the data logs, like it's a huge difference in performance, and that's 25 horsepower in that particular car that you're missing because you know it's just not a quality product. But like you know, like for the RS3s, TTRSs, it's very critical on those cars to have a proper intercooler on them. Even like you know stage 1 cars, you know. So when we say stage 2, when you put stage 2, like one of the first things I recommend, more so than a downpipe, is to put intercooler on it.
Yeah.